All right, so next, and I forgot my notes on this one, so I don't want to miss anybody. Next, we have our last panel. And this is all about Rumpelstiltskin. And Rumpelstiltskin was all about spinning straw into gold, and there's a big story. But, for us, it's really about the fact that trust that credit unions have with their members is truly golden. And so with that, I'd like to invite our last fantastic, fabulous panel up to the stage. Gigi Hyland of the National Credit Union Foundation, Seth Brickman of QCash Financial, Enrique Delgadillo from Balance, Linda White from QCUWLA, and Eric Estes from Boulder Dam Credit Union. Let's go.
First of all, what an amazing day. Of applause to everybody at Mitchell Stankovic and Associates. Incredible. It's such an honor to be up here with the four of you. So I'm going to set a little bit of the background here. I don't know about you all, but when Sue called me and asked me to speak about Rumpelstiltskin, I had to reread the story, right? If there's an analogy here, if you think about like Marvel Comics or DC Comics and like Justice League, Rumpelstiltskin probably wouldn't have made like the Justice League, right? He's kind of one of those anti-heroes, if you will, that's, I don't know, just not as well known. So just as a reminder, there are lots of moral lessons here in the Rumpelstiltskin story, but bottom line, this miller started to brag about his daughter to the king. And he said that his daughter could spin straw into gold. And the king took him up on this and locked the daughter in a room and required her over one night to spin straw into gold. And she was obviously fretting because she didn't know how to do this. And this interesting gentleman appeared and said, I can do that for you if you'll give me your necklace. And she goes, okay, I'd rather lose the necklace and not lose my head, because the king had threatened to cut it off. King is greedy. She does this, puts her in a room the second day, a bigger room, more straw, spin me more gold, again fretting. This little guy comes back and says, I can do it again if you give me the ring that you have on. She says, okay, no problem. Third day in a row, King is super greedy, says one more time, biggest room he can think of, full of straw, spin it into gold. Rumpelstiltskin says, I will do it again if you give me your first child. So now the ante is up. She goes, well, I'm not married now. There's no way I'm going to have children. It's all good. So as you might guess, Rumpelstiltskin delivers on the story. The miller's daughter eventually marries the king and has a baby, cherishing this beautiful first child, and guess who pops up again? Is Rumpelstiltskin. And so the miller's daughter, now a queen, makes another deal with Rumpelstiltskin and says, you cannot have my firstborn child. And he goes, I will have your firstborn child unless you can think of my name and actually say my name within 3 days. And so the next part of the bargain is, can she come up with his name? She doesn't the first day, she doesn't the second day. The second evening, she goes out into the woods, fretting, figuring out what she's going to do. And she sees a fire, and she walks through the woods, and she sees this little gentleman dancing by the fire, singing this song about how she's never going to guess his name because his name is Rumpelstiltskin. The next day, as you might guess, he says, what's my name? And she goes, is it Harry? Is it Joe? Is it Paul? He's laughing. He thinks he's going to get the child. And she goes, is it Rumpelstiltskin? And a huge hole opens up in the floor, and you never see Rumpelstiltskin again. So, happy ending for the queen. She keeps her child. Not so happy ending, pretty grim for Rumpelstiltskin, because we don't know what happened to him. Gold, trust is like gold within the credit union system. We've heard a lot of conversation about technology, the speed of technology. Everything is moving so fast. How can credit unions keep up? We're already too far behind. Members, mission, margin. How do you know that you can actually keep members regardless of where they're they're University of Nevada students that are up here, or whether they are someone who's been in the credit union system who does not use a credit union credit card when she travels, ever, even though she has been in the system for 33 years. Trust. Trust is golden. Who wants to start? Seth?
All right. I'm sorry, I can't sit when I talk, so I'm going to stand. And here's the way I see gold, and here's how I spin gold. Last year, we knew that 167 million people struggled financially. This year, that number is 176 million people who are struggling financially. Last year, 1 out of every 10 were credit invisible or a thin file. This year, it's 2 out of every 10. In 2021, the CFPB told us 26 million people were credit invisible. And we sit here and we talk as credit unions about we want to grow membership, but we want A-plus paper membership. We don't want the credit invisible. We've got nothing for them. Or we don't want thin files because we can't lend to them. Well, the truth is, when I first joined this industry and as leading QCash, I thought that financial inclusion and lending deeper, that was a great social initiative, and it was something that all credit unions needed to do. What I have learned over the last several years is it is an important social initiative, but more importantly, it's actually a financial imperative for us to stay relevant and for us to be able to continue. You've heard from all the Gen Zs today. The reality is Gen Zs are those thin files. They're the credit invisible. They're the ones that are looking for help, and when they look, they don't find what they're looking for. So how do we embrace technology? How do we embrace products that we can bring to market that service these people? You heard them talk about, I want instant gratification. Well, not a sales pitch, but that's why our product goes from link to funds in under 60 seconds, because it's instant gratification. But there's lots of products that can do that for you. And so how do we embrace the mindset that lending deeper and driving financial inclusion isn't a social initiative, it's a financial imperative? Because when we look at it from that perspective, I really think our mindset changes. I think the way we think about executing on it changes. And if we think that 26 million credit invisibles in 2021, and some people will say that number has more than doubled by the time we've gotten to 2023, that is a pool of credit union members that would make your numbers skyrocket, right? Imagine those members coming to your credit union, joining your credit union. Deposits today, maybe not. Deposits tomorrow, absolutely. But what happens is you create members for life. Right? You don't create members for today that are going to drive that bottom line, but you're offering them goods and services that allow them to actually become active, engaged members, and you're going to see that lifetime value. So my view of spinning gold is let's go after those members. There could be upwards of 50 million of them, 2 out of every 10, credit invisible thin file. We go after them. That's going to be a game changer for us, and it's going to be a game changer for our industry.
Cool. Enrique, want to go ahead?
Gigi, thank you.
Please.
Thank you for doing the recap, by the way, on Rumplestiltskin. That was fantastic. And I want to thank Sue and Zach. You know, when I first got invited and you said Rumplestiltskin, I was thinking to myself, oh my goodness, I vaguely remember it. You couldn't give me La Llorona. You couldn't give me El Cucuy. You had to give me Rumplestiltskin. I have no idea what Rumplestiltskin is. So I started reading the story, and Gigi, you did a phenomenal recap. Amen. You know, that was fantastic. So I think I did the wrong homework assignment because I kept concentrating on Rumplestiltskin, and I wanted to draw the parallel, and I wanted to draw the correlation. So I was thinking to myself, you know, when the miller went out and stopped the king, all he really wanted was financial wellness. What he wanted was financial well-being because he was tired of being poor. So why did he stop the king? Why couldn't he just go down through the forest and find his local credit union? Probably because the miller was probably like the 17 million Americans that are unbanked. Probably because it's like the 55 million that are underbanked. So you have to go through a different route. And when you go a different route and you don't go through the route of your trusted credit union, then you end up in a situation dealing with Rumplestiltskin, not knowing the terms, not knowing the conditions, end up, dare I say, in a predatory situation, because that's what ended up happening. So I kept thinking to myself, that's what I wanted to kind of draw the connection and say, all that was wanted was that financial wellness. And how do you get to that financial well-being? How do you tell the story? How do you want your credit union to be talked about? Do you want to be talked about from a standpoint of transactions, from branches, that it's easy to go in there? Or do you want your credit union, the name to pop out when someone is having a conversation about buying a car, thinking about buying a house, talking about financial wellness? Is that how you want to be remembered? I personally have a Gen Zer and a Gen Xer that live in my household. And the one thing I do know is they're very opinionated. And it is unbelievable how they look at me, and you would think that I have no idea what I'm talking about. The idea that I still want to leave the house with cash causes a gasp to them. They can't believe that, and they're like, what are you doing with cash? Who still spends cash? So I start thinking, well, wait a minute, maybe I'm out of touch. And I went back to Rumplestiltskin, and I wanted to be able to say, how do you want your credit union to be remembered? And more importantly, if you don't take care of your members, they're going to end up being taken care of by Rumplestiltskin. That was my homework assignment. I am so sorry. I stuck with the story.
Good job. Fabulous. Awesome. Linda.
Wow. So see, I'm really big on analogies, and I didn't overthink this one. So I'm going to take it from the perspective of trust and equity. So I'm Linda White. I'm the executive director of the Credit Union Women's Leadership Alliance, or QCash, which was formed for female CEOs of credit unions under 300 million. Of the 4,700 credit unions in the country, and that number changes day by day, 80% of those credit unions are under 300 million assets. Of those 80%, of those 300 million, 60% plus are run by women. So QCash was formed to have about sustainability of small credit unions, primarily run by women, to have that trusted space, to be able to share the unique differences and challenges that women face every day. And how do we help them to be sustainable and to have that trusted conversation? And this is, I say this when I talk, this isn't about male versus female. It's not about that. But the reality of it is the conversation is different, and how do women show up? And I actually had somebody recently ask me, somebody you would have never thought, that would ask me, why women only? And I said, well, the equities or the inequities, because women make between 20 and 30% less than men. How do we change that? And it's not going to change overnight. And again, this is like, we have lots of peers. I mean, my successor is a man, and then lots of peers and cohorts that are all welcoming and embracing, but the conversation is different. So one of the things I did when I took over as executive director, because I am a founding member of QCash, which was formed in 2020 in the middle of the pandemic. And here we are 3 years later. But when I took over, one of the first things I did was to want to have a communication portal and not a listserv, where our members can share ideas. And when I look through it, it's kind of like, I look to see what the conversation is different than when I've been on other portals. And I will tell you, never have I seen a comment, and they are raw and they are deep. Never have I seen anybody said, why didn't you? It's never, why didn't you? It's never that. It's like, what can I do to help? Here's something you may want to think about. The language is different, to where the more you share, the more they share. And then on top of that, how do we find solutions for them to be able to be better in their communities? Ron said earlier in the day, the first thing walking in the door was like, if you are doing the same thing the same way you did last year, pretty soon you're going to be part of a $5 million credit union. Right? And so I love that comment because it talks about, like I said, the recapping, technologies and how are technologies like geared towards larger credit unions? What are solutions that are out there to help smaller credit unions? Not just women-run credit unions, but they do share more. So how do we start there? So I have the opportunity to start to vet and talk and find solutions that could work for our credit unions. And then how can I'm sitting here talking with some of my friends, how do we share that across the system to make sure that we have sustainable credit unions of all like genders, whatever that looks like. But I think that's really about the trust and the equity to be represented and to be there and to have that safe space.
Awesome. Thanks for that perspective, Linda. Eric.
So I retired 3 weeks ago, and after this conference today, I really think I timed it right. So today is our board planning session, so it's the first one I've missed in about 30 years. And during that planning session, one of the first things I always ask our board is, who do you trust in an untrustworthy world? How do you trust in an untrustworthy world? We have millions of seniors being defrauded every day. And the attempts are many times more than that. And they're being told not to trust anyone on the phone, not to trust anyone on the computer. We have youth, Gen Z and Gen Y, that grew up in an environment watching their parents lose their homes during an economic crisis, who don't trust financial institutions and certainly don't trust the way the big banks treated their parents during that time, and eventually lost their homes. And what I think we have, to a great extent, and this includes our two children who fall in that age range, you have a risk-averse population coming up, or a debt-averse population coming up, that don't want to borrow. They don't want to owe anybody because they saw what happened to their parents back in the day when they were growing up. There's no trust out there. And then you sit here today and you listen to the IT infrastructure that we're developing within our credit unions to have a no-trust environment. And that's, while it's a prudent approach, it's the message we're sending to our staff. It's a no-trust environment. And the other side to that is internal controls within our institutions are designed and built to instill in our staff that we don't trust them. And the irony of that is, from my history in working in these institutions for 35 or 40 years, is the one person you're trying to stop is going to find a way to do it regardless of the controls you put in place. So we have around us so many avenues of threats to the trust and the trust environment that we're trying to create. And I do think we as institutions and as an industry that I'm extremely proud to have been a part of and hope to continue to be so in the future, have developed one of the best trust environments you could possibly ask for from an industry. But it's fragile. And it's how we treat it that's important. And from Boulder Dam Credit Union standpoint, our marketing budget, which is a small marketing budget in comparison, we've got a 75 to 80% penetration rate in our community. We have one competitor, and it's Wells Fargo. And I will tell you, if you could ask for just one competitor to be in your market, Wells Fargo is a great one to have. They can make you look good. But so our responsibility in marketing isn't for billboards, it's not for television advertising at all, it's for community investment. It's to put the money back in the community, not just through our products, not through the way we don't charge fees, but the marketing budget itself becomes a payback that builds the fabric of the community and builds trust in the community that we mean the right things and that we do the right things. We offer a high school financial education class through Brandy Stankovic, who developed that, about 18 years ago now, I think? She looks like she's 20. That has been highly successful, and we reach 90% of the high school seniors when they graduate with financial education courses, and we don't charge them a dime for it, and we pay them to attend it because you know you have to have a hook. But they know we're doing it for their well-being, not for ours. We are in the senior center at least once a week with educational material on the latest fraud trends. They know to come to us if they get a call or if they have a breach in their system and they can't understand how to deal with it. There's so many moving parts in the environment today, and I love the conversations we've had today, and obviously 80-85% of it's revolved around technology, which is the future, but you can't forget the people. You just can't forget the people, because we as an institutions, for those of us who are on the credit union side, we all have access to the same vendors. We all have access to the same products. We all have access to basically the same structure. And the only thing between those variables and our members are our people. And that's where the difference lies. And we can't forget about them. And we can't let them be threatened by technology. We have to help them, assist us in bringing technology on and doing it in the right way and not spreading ourselves too thin. And getting back to what Jim said before, we can't be everything to everybody, so we damn well better find out what we're really good at and build on that, because that's your competitive advantage. But trust is under attack. And I do think you can spin gold. You hold the trust of your members in the palm of your hand and the trust of your staff. And I would say probably most importantly, the trust of yourself.
Right? Right? Just yourself, yeah.
There's a fine art in the philanthropy world that we call the art of giving a damn. And that's what this is. That's what you just talked about. That as credit unions, we have this very unique advantage of being centered around members. Kevin said it so beautifully. Members first, mission, and then margin. And it is members that have to drive. I would argue that we are in no different a position than we were in 1934. Yes, the world has changed. Yes, the tools are different. Yes, there's technology. Yes, yes, yes. That's how you do things. The how is always going to change. The why is not going to change. The why is still about human beings. You heard it from the youngsters. I feel like I can call them that now. I'm old enough now, the youngsters that were up here saying, I still want things that are things for my life, for my financial well-being. I just want them delivered seamlessly. I want it too. We said that in many of the sessions today. We all want that for our lives, but we also want to be able to trust people to give us the advice we need and the help we need, because finances are really, really hard. No matter what stage of life you're on, payments can be really, really hard if you use them every single day. How do we show up for our members? How do we give a damn about our members? How do we give a damn about our employees? And how do we leverage that to build the trust bridge that you are talking about? Last word, we have 3 minutes and 52 seconds. Last word of advice. This is the last panel of this amazing day. What would you say to the attendees in the room about one action they should take back and do in their institution? Let's go in reverse order. Eric, I'm going to start with you.
I like to better the other way.
I know.
I would get back to, we as leaders in the industry need to be sure that our staff trust that we have their best interest at heart. We need to care about the people that work for us, just like we care about our family. We need to understand that they have a personal life and a family life outside of a professional life. We're responsible for all that. And by putting them in a position where they honestly believe we care about those things, they will care about what's important to us and what's important to our institution.
I'm going to go back to my favorite thing, which is what can you do? And I think to add to that, sharing, because we talked about all the things we can do, and we're better together. We talked about credit unions, we're better together. What can we do collectively as an industry to be sustainable and to be here for the future? Because we're hearing this, it's like repeatedly, is that we do really well with people. And I love the quote earlier today that, AI is there, but we have the relationship. I think George said that earlier in the day. And I think really about relationships and doing what can you do.
Enrique?
We have the ability in our hands to create the happily ever after. We have that ability. The GRIM today, the Financial Health Network, put out their financial health pulse. And we're going in the wrong direction. People are feeling more financially vulnerable pre-pandemic. So what's our financial wellness journey? What are we doing? How are we telling the story? And are we with them throughout that journey? For them to be able to look back and say, yes, they were with me, they helped me, I'm in a much better position. So my last comment is to say, please remember, you have the ability to create the happily ever after.
Seth, bring us home.
All right. 64% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck, and that's regardless of socioeconomic status. That's those making $30,000, those making $300,000. The year-over-year growth, the majority of it was actually people making over $100,000 a year. The Census Bureau recently released some data that showed in every single state in our nation, in order for somebody to afford a 2-bedroom apartment, they need to make more than double what the federal minimum wage is. 58% of people using predatory lending are what we call more month than money, meaning they get to the end of the month, they can't put food on their table, pay their rent, pay their electric bill. To me, we can solve that problem. We can create products for those people. And on top of that, we can reach the credit invisible and the credit thin files. So for me, it's let's have something that reaches people when they're in these positions, and then they will return that favor to us as they get into better positions and we become their primary financial institution.
Please thank this amazing panel.
All right.
Back to you, Zach.
Yes, back to me. Thank you, panel. Eric, I'm going to ask you to just sit there. The rest of you are released. Yes, yes.
Well, that's not
yes,
good.
I know. Yes, one more round for
You're in
our
trouble
final
now.
panel here. Amazing.